Nostalgia can be a dangerous thing. And in the last episode, we learned that the hard way with quite the disappointing return to Risen 1. So after the disappointment of Risen, I thought to myself, let's check out another game from my childhood. And if there's one franchise that defines my childhood, it's Star Wars. From the video games to the Lego sets to every other toy you could possibly get, I had everything, even Star Wars bedsheets from episode 2. I remember playing most of the games that came out in the early 2000s as well, or watching my dad play them since I wasn't old enough to play the games yet. There were two specific games that stood out to me, and those were Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, and the topic of today's video, Knights of the Old Republic. Now, I didn't know what kind of impact returning to this game would have on me, but it did start a chain reaction. I just had to get this for the Darth Malak in here because of the game. It's the only figure they got, right? Had to get it. So yeah, as you can see, this game has rekindled my Star Wars interest, which has been gone for a couple of years now, but we are back now and ready to check out Knights of the Old Republic to figure out if it is still one of the best RPGs of all time or not. And to make things even more interesting, we are going to test out the Nintendo Switch port of the game. Since I played the PC version a lot, I want to know what the Switch version of the game can provide and if it's any good. Hi, I'm Nik Von Crait and welcome to the best RPG. I have to say, I was quite skeptical of the idea of playing Knights of the Old Republic on the Switch, since I couldn't imagine how the controls translate well to controller. But it was actually pretty easy to play the game. It just takes a bit of time to get used to the controls, and after the tutorial, I was already used to how it worked. Sure, there were some slip-ups with the button inputs here and there, but that was after I didn't play the game for a couple of days. When it comes to performance, I didn't have any issues. The game played well in both handheld and TV mode. Now the graphics obviously aren't the best of the best, since we're talking about a game here that is 20 years old and just got upscaled to be able to play it on a modern console. Unfortunately, the upscaling here is inconsistent, since certain NPC faces will look like they were taken straight from the Nintendo 64 and others look more detailed, which can take you out of the game sometimes. Another problem the game has always had is the fact that they only have around 10 faces for NPCs and your own character. So you will see a lot of humans that look like each other, and I'm not a big fan of that. I feel like I need to explain myself here though. I know the game is on the older side, and it would take a lot more work to make everyone look different, and would have made the game be even bigger to install. And since I have the physical version here from my childhood, I can show you that the game, how it is now, already needed 4 discs to install the game, and I can just imagine that it would probably add another disc if they added more faces for NPCs. Now I don't need every single character to look different, but it would be nice to have quest-related NPCs to at least look different from each other. The game also likes to reuse character models that are relevant to the main story, since they use the same model for Darth Malak's henchmen twice. You kill one of them halfway through the game, and towards the end of the game another student pops up with the exact same look. No changes, not even like a different outfit, just the exact same bald dude. And yeah, that basically covers all of my issues with the game. Well, technically there was one more issue, but I don't know if it's the game or the console's fault, since sometimes I would press A to move through the dialogue and the game would automatically pick my next dialogue choice, even though I wasn't able to read the choices. And the person that we skipped was still talking. It didn't happen to me in any major moments, but it could be a problem if it did. So I just want to point that out. Another thing worth pointing out is the fact that you can accidentally start conversations with your companions, since the game likes to sneakily switch over to them while you're trying to loot remains or footlockers. These aren't major things, they are just a bit annoying. When it comes to the story, the game is still one of the best Star Wars stories told in gaming. The only one that can even come close is the story of the Jedi Fallen Order games. To put a modern spin on it, this game is like the Clair Obscur of the Star Wars universe. Now, I have to say, the game feels very long in the beginning and the finale feels very short compared to it. For me, the game would be split into 3 acts. Act 1 would be the tutorial, which is the Ender Spire and all of Terrace, and it ends with your arrival on Dantooine. Act 2 then picks up on Dantooine and goes up to the Leviathan. And Act 3 would go from the Leviathan to the finale of the game. The first act does take a good while and doesn't really have a lot of filler content, because everything you do here is related to the story. But yeah, it'll probably take you a good 10 hours to get out of the first planet, which is Terrace. And I think the design of Terrace is perfect for a first planet that introduces you to all of the mechanics of the game. Following that is Act 2, which sets you free on Dantooine, where you finally become a Jedi. This planet has one of the nicest quests and probably most known, since you can't really avoid it, and that is the murder mystery quest. But I won't go into details, since I want you guys to experience the interesting stuff yourselves. After leaving Dantooine, the world opens up and you have an objective. You need to find all of the star maps that lead to the Star Forge. Dantooine held the first of the maps, and you have to find 4 more of these. The star maps are hidden on Tatooine, Korriban, Manaan, and Kashyyyk. All of the planets have their own stories and have their complete own design and unique quest lines. Now you can tackle the planets however you want. Just know that Malak sends people after you on 2 of the planets. The first being a famous bounty hunter, and the second his little Sith apprentice that we mentioned earlier. And they appear wherever you decide to go, so you can't escape them by going to a certain planet over the others. Once you've obtained 3 star maps, you get caught by the Leviathan, which is Darth Malak's own ship. Think of it like his version of Darth Vader's Super Star Destroyer, the Executor, or the Invisible Hand of General Grievous. After you escape the Leviathan, Act 3 starts for me. In this, you find the last star map and find the Star Forge and come face to face with Darth Malak for the final showdown. And since this is an RPG where they give you the feeling that your choice matters, you have a good and bad ending, so you can choose between being a Jedi or a Sith at the end. But it just bothers me so much that there isn't a gray Jedi option in this game, since I don't personally agree with the Jedi ways, but on the flip side, I think the way the Sith operate here is very barbaric and made me dislike both sides. If I could, I wouldn't have picked any of the 2 sides, but it is what it is. What you pick doesn't just affect your story, it also affects your companions. So what better time to cover all of the companions of the game and my thoughts on each and every one of them than now. This game has a good variety when it comes to companions. The first one you ever meet will be Karth. He's a Republic soldier and always represents the light side in conversations. Next you run into Mission and Zalbar, a Twi'lek and Wookiee duo who also represent the light side. We also need to find T3M4, who's a droid that helps us with breaking into a base. Next up you have Bastila, the Jedi that you're looking for on Terrace. She represents the light side and has an attitude that makes me not like her. I just find her so pretentious and annoying in dialogue, but that basically represents the Jedi in general. The last companion we find on Terrace is Canderous. He's a Mandalorian mercenary who represents the dark side. The next one we meet is on Dantooine, and it's Juhani. This is a really interesting one for me, since you can technically miss her as a companion, since she's a Jedi that turned to the dark side, and you need to use the right dialogue options to get her to see the light again. If you fail this check, it ends in you killing Juhani, so you have to be careful of what you say to her. Moving over to Tatooine, this is where you find the next droid, which is HK-47, who once belonged to another Jedi. He also represents the dark side. From Tatooine, we move to Kashyyyk, where we run into Jolee, who's a grey Jedi that exiled himself in the Shadowlands of Kashyyyk. For some reason, he represents the light side choices in this game, which is quite confusing for a grey Jedi. All in all, these companions are a good mix, and I think some of the discussions they will randomly have can also be really interesting, especially if they have opposing opinions, like for example Karth and Canderous, who are on different sides of the Mandalorian War. One tricky thing about the companions in this game, though, is they like to fake you out when it comes to the stats they have, because some of them will have named weapons, which are, for example, Zalbar's bowcaster, which is a shooting weapon, which makes you think Zalbar would be good at using ranged weapons, but he's actually better at using melee weapons, and the same goes for Mission. Mission has a vibro blade, which is a sword, but she's actually better at using using ranged weapons according to a stat. And this game likes to do that with a lot of the characters here, where the stats would be better for something different than what they actually use. Now let's finally talk about the gameplay, which is really simple. You have a bunch of different tabs in the bottom corner. You can pick from normal attacks, special attacks, force support, grenades and mines, and the last one are just healing items, shields to protect you, and stimulants to boost you in combat. It's a pretty outdated layout if you compare it to modern RPGs, but it does what it's supposed to do and it works just fine. Even though I wish it would have been a different layout, but that is what mods on PC are for, I guess. Now, force powers feel really cool in this game, and you have the classic ones in here like the lightning, the choke, and force push, which all have improved versions that you don't see in a lot of Star Wars media, and I think that's really cool. Alright, now let's get into my final verdict for Knights of the Old Republic. I think after over 20 years, KOTOR is still my favorite Star Wars game of all time, and made me get back into Star Wars as a franchise, but does my favorite Star Wars game also mean it's the best RPG of all time? Well, for me, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is one of the best RPGs. It's not the best, and that is simply down to how games have evolved over the years. This game can't keep up with modern releases in certain aspects. And on the other hand, it does things so much better than certain modern games from the studio that brought us this game. Alright, I didn't mention this to you guys earlier. This is a BioWare game. You know, the studio known for games like Dragon Age, The Veil Guard, and Anthem? Well, at least in modern times. Anyways, enough of the things used to be so much better back in the day, and back to praising a truly great RPG that I think everyone should play at least once in their lifetime. And the game is playable on multiple platforms, so find where you want to play the game and pick it up. Well, unless you have a PlayStation. It literally doesn't have a PlayStation port, which makes me think they announced the remake on PlayStation for that exact reason. But I will cover the whole KOTOR remake topic in another video, since I do have some opinions about remakes, and especially for this game. So guys, let me know in the comments below if you've played the game, what did you think of it, and also what is your favorite Star Wars game of all time. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video and hit that subscribe button if you want to join me on the journey of finding my favorite RPG of all time. Until next time, I hope all of you have a beautiful rest of your day, and may the Force be with you.